Last week, I received this clip.
Wait a minute, Erik Prince is talking about being a colonialist again.
Absolutely.
From some concerned people here in the Pan-African community. It comes from this particular individual by the name of Erik Prince. Now, he's having a discussion on the podcast, and I believe what the aim of the podcast is to discuss African immigration into the United States because of the migrant crisis. So he has a particular solution for this. Let's check it out.
Then it's time for us to just put the imperial hat back on to say, we're going to govern those countries if you're incapable of governing yourselves, because enough is enough. We're done being invaded.
Because our own national security risk is at stake.
Exactly.
National security interests are at stake.
You can say that about pretty much all of Africa. They're incapable of governing themselves and benefiting their citizens because the governments there are all about looting and pillaging and lining their pockets and going shopping in Paris instead of actually making their country better.
People on the left are going to watch this. They're going to say, wait a minute, Erik Prince is talking about being a colonialist again.
Absolutely. Yes.
So yeah, let's rewind and make sure he said yes.
Wait a minute, Erik Prince is talking about being a colonialist again.
Absolutely. Yes.
He said yes. He wants to recolonize Africa. And this has pissed off a lot of people. And it's very interesting how somebody like this man can come out and say, you know, Africa needs to be recolonized because it's corrupt. When you have so many Europeans and Americans always apologizing for African colonization. And then if you want to go further, the African slave trade and all of those things. Let me deal with this in two parts. The first part is whites or Europeans have helped Africa become more destabilized. That's true. The King of Belgium now has talked about this and how sorry he is for making the Congo, Rwanda, and these other places destabilized.
Le régime colonial, comme tel, était basé sur l'exploitation et la domination. Ce régime était celui d'une relation inégale, en soi injustifiable, marquée par le paternalisme, les discriminations et le racisme.
He isn't the first European country to say so. Many of them have. The United States and reparations, they all admit their atrocities towards blacks. This man here, it's interesting that he wants to hold Africa solely accountable. Let's talk about what happened in Mozambique. When Samora Machel and the rebels took back the country, what did the Portuguese do? They took away all of their infrastructure. They did the same thing in almost every African country. The French did it in Guinea. They keep doing that. So what he's talking about doesn't make sense. They have still been running these countries even though they've left. Look at Nigeria. Nigeria, the Christians and the whites came in and the British came in. They set up all in the south, right? That's why the Igbos and the Yorubas had so much of an advantage over the north. They set up Christianity in Nigeria. But when it came to the Biafra War, who did the whites support? Who did the Europeans support? Most of them supported the north. Why? They wanted resources. They've been keeping the resources. France still has all of its currencies there, a lot of its businesses there. They've been trying to destabilize Africa for years. And this guy has the nerve to say, well, we're tired of them coming over to our country. Well, you never gave them an opportunity to build their own stuff. And we all know that. That's point number one. Here's the sad part with point number two. He's right about certain things. Let's talk about it. You see, firstly, in 1957, when Kwame Nkrumah made his freedom speech about how he wanted Africa to be independent, well, he said something like this.
We are waking. We shall no more go back to sleep anymore. We are going to demonstrate to the world, to the other nations, young as we are, that we are prepared to lay our own foundation. As I said in the assembly just minutes ago, I made it point that we are going to say that we create our own African personality and identity. It's the only way in which we can show the world that we are ready for our own battle. But today, may I call upon you all that at this great day, let us all remember that nothing in the world can be done unless it has the purported support of God. We have done the battle. And we again rededicate ourselves not only in the struggle to emancipate other territories in Africa Our independence is meaningless unless it is linked up with the total liberation of the African continent.
We all know about the historic freedom chant, right?
Freedom. Freedom.
We all heard it. But when blacks say they want to be independent, here's the skinny on it. Nobody wants to hear that you're failing once you claim independence. Ghana claimed its independence, Nigeria claimed its in 1960, Kenya, all of the other countries, Uganda in 1962, and now you're supposed to be free. Congratulations, give yourselves a round of applause. You're an independent country now. But guess what? You can't be out there up either when you say you're independent, because when you say you don't need the white man's money anymore, you want to be socialist and things like that, well, you got to be successful, and that's the hard reality of it all. You see, here's a situation about independent countries. You're sovereign. You're breaking away from the colonial masters. But when you break away from the colonial masters and then you beat yourself, well, they're not going to talk about, well, you know what, we were your colonial masters before. We stole from you. We pillaged you. We did all of these things. All of those things are true, right? We know that they're at fault, and he doesn't want to realize his fault in that. But the reality is that when you're losing and you say you want to be independent, you're saying, hey, listen, I'm independent. I am on my own. I will not beat myself. I have to govern myself. And when you can't govern yourself, then what happens is you leave situations like this to occur. For example, under the president of Jonathan Goodluck, his administration, in 2012, he created something very interesting called the Nigerian Oil Wealth Fund. Now, oil wealth funds are something to preserve the wealth, and it typically allows countries like Norway or Saudi Arabia to take that oil money when the price of barrels is high to invest into other things in the country, such as other industries, such as tourism. You've seen the UAE do this. The UAE, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, places like that, they got rich off oil, but now you've seen a lot of the money has been diversified into tourism, into trade, into infrastructure, things like that. Well, that's what the Nigerian Oil Wealth Fund was supposed to do. And at one time, they had a lot of money until this happened.
A row has broken out among Nigerian officials over the whereabouts of $700 million allegedly stolen from the country's sovereign wealth fund, set up by former President Goodluck Jonathan's administration in 2012. The account was designed to hold excess revenue accrued when oil prices are high. But with crude now below $50 a barrel, managers of the fund are saying they cannot account for $700 million. The missing funds have become the latest scandal to hit Africa's largest economy. President Muhammadu Buhari believes about $150 million was stolen from the public purse over the past decade. He has appointed a committee to advise him on the best way to tackle corruption and reform the legal system.
That's right, $700 million gone. We don't know how it was going, and at one point, the fund was as low as $400,000 when the fund had over $10 billion in it. You see, the reality is when you have things like this, then when the whites come in and say you need to be recolonized again, you can't always go back and say, well, you colonized us, well, you beat us, well, you pillaged us, well, you do all, yeah, we all know that, and that is true. That's 100% true.
He ain't lying.
But the question's gonna be is, what did you do in your power to stop that? Because here are the examples they're gonna use. Look at India. See, India was colonized. See, India was doing bad. But hey, why isn't Nigeria or Uganda like India? Well, look at Singapore. I know Singapore is a small country, but Singapore had no resources. Doesn't have the resources the Congo does. But look, it's flourishing. Why not you? Let's look at Pakistan. All of these other places that had wars and all of these poverties and crimes and stuff. Why are you not developing at that rate? Because those are the questions that people are going to ask. People are tired of black people having excuses as to why they're not doing good. And then whenever blacks are not doing well, we have the excuse of, well, you had us in Jim Crow. You had us in apartheid. Let's look at the ANC right now in South Africa. Love South Africa, love going there and stop the show. Still want to come back, don't want y'all to beat me or shoot me from what I'm about to say. But you've seen what's been happening with the power supply in South Africa. We've seen that South Africa has 20,000 murders every year. Now, It's on the rise. And the ANC has been in control since 94. Well, then what do you say to that? I'm not blaming South Africans for anything, but I'm just using South Africa as an argument. What can you say? Do you want to say that the whites are better off in South Africa? Surely that's not the case. And I'm sure our brothers and sisters in South Africa will figure it out because we're all as blacks figuring it out, and it takes time. I get it. But when you have these comments and people saying things like this, what they're looking at is, despite all of the problems you've had, what did you do about it? And that is why we are here today in the black world. We have to understand that, yes, we have been tormented. We have been colonized. We have been in slavery. Somebody like me didn't get a chance to grow up in Africa because I was a part of the slave trade. My family got took from West Africa somewhere to the States, and then we got stuck with the Jim Crow and the segregation and all of that stuff, and then redlined, and my grandmother was hit with water hoses and marches and discriminated and had to walk across the street when a white man was there and had to clean house for white people. All of those things my own grandmother had to deal with. My own godmother dealt with that in Pritchard, Alabama, right? So if anybody knows about this, I do, because I heard it since I've been living. But the question is, why can't you work well with other blacks? The question is, why can't you build with your own community? The question is, who taught you to hate yourself when you have an ability not to hate yourself? See, all of those questions and abilities are upon us. The way the rest of the world looks at it is get over it. That's how they look at it. They don't care about your problems. They don't care about our problems. We're not going to always be able to say, well, the reason why we're not doing good in Africa or in the black world is because what the whites did. They don't want to hear it. And I'm going to be honest. A lot of blacks is like, okay, we understand. We have to make a better effort because the reality is this. We are humans like anybody else. I believe that we can solve a lot of our own problems overnight if we were just patient enough to work through them. So no, Africa does not need to be recolonized by any whites because we can govern ourselves. We have the ability to govern ourselves. The question is, do we want to govern ourselves? And when questions like this come about, we don't always need to get mad at what people like this say. Of course, they're going to be on the other side. They don't look at it from our end. But we also need to look at it from the end of what everybody else sees. Everybody cannot keep feeling sorry for Africa or keep feeling sorry for blacks or keep feeling sorry for what we're going through. At a certain point, we got to stand on our own 2 feet and say, listen, we need to skill our own selves up. We need to reinvest into our own people. We need to catch up. And you know what? We are definitely capable of doing that. Nigeria has shown evidence of that. I think Kenya has shown evidence of that. Uganda has shown evidence of that. All of us have shown evidence of that. We just need to show more evidence of that. And with each other's help, we can achieve that. Otherwise, people are going to say, well, why are those people leaving your country? You're not going to always be able to say, well, because you destabilized us 40 years down the line. They're going to be like, okay, listen, bro. You've been an independent country for over 70 years now, or 100 years now. That was 100 years ago. And you might say I'm sounding like a sellout, but at some point, you gotta win. Think about your favorite NFL franchise. Storytime music. The Detroit Lions is one of the worst franchises in NFL history. Perennial losers. Until this year. They went 12-5, and they went to the NFC Championship, and they almost beat my 49ers. Wanna know what? They almost won, and they're gonna be winners at certain points. Wanna know why? Well, they got tired of losing, so they started winning. And they can't say, well, you know what? We've had bad ownership for 60 years. That's why we're not winning. The fans don't want to hear that. The fans want to see wins. And you know what? I want to see wins. Blacks have to understand this is how other people feel about us. We got to do something about it. We can't beat ourselves. We can't keep stealing from ourselves. We can't keep lying to ourselves. We have to learn how to treat each other right so that we can overcome like that one. So guys, what do you think? It's your boy, Shady Jackson. Back at it again with this episode here at Kenganda. Appreciate you for what you do. We're out.